Welcome. My name is Fernando Cantero. I am a project manager for the South Lamar Boulevard corridor with the City of Austin's Corridor Construction Program. On behalf of the City of Austin, in coordination with Texas Department of Transportation, or TxDOT, I would like to welcome you to the virtual public hearing for South Lamar Boulevard project. Thank you for your attendance, and we look forward to receiving your comments. The virtual public hearing for the proposed South Lamar project launched on Wednesday, July 15th, 2020 at 9 a.m. and will extend through 5 p.m. on Thursday, July 30th, 2020. The purpose of this public hearing is to provide an update on the project and to receive public input on the proposed improvements. The format of the hearing will include a project and environmental overview of the South Lamar Boulevard project. Following the launch of the presentation, members of the public may submit comments. If you experience technical difficulties with the virtual public hearing, please contact the South Lamar Boulevard Communications Liaison in the City of Austin Corridor Program Office at 512-974-7904. You may also request special accommodations, assistance accessing public hearing information and materials, and language and interpretation needs other than English or Spanish. Please note, discussion with project staff will not be included in the official record of this public hearing. If members of the public wish to submit a comment to be part of the official record of this public hearing, they can do so in several ways. All verbal and written comments must be received or postmarked before the end of the comment period on Thursday, July 30th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Comments can be submitted in several ways, including verbally by calling 512-974-9444 and leaving a voicemail. In writing online by using the web form linked in the public comments section of austintexas.gov/SouthLamarENV. By email to southlamar@austintexas.gov or by mail to the City of Austin Corridor Program Office, P.O. Box 1088, Austin, Texas 78767. Responses to verbal and written comments received will be available online at austintexas.gov/SouthLamarENV once the final report has been approved. Please note that per TxDOT requirements, the City of Austin is not permitted to respond to comments or questions before the official meeting summary is complete. Now I will provide a presentation regarding the South Lamar Boulevard Corridor Improvement Project. To provide some background, in 2016, Austin voters passed the 2016 Mobility Bond, which provides $720 million for transportation improvements throughout the City of Austin. As part of the Corridor Mobility Program, $482 million of the bond funds are being used to design and construct multimodal improvements on the 9 major roadways. South Lamar Boulevard between Riverside Drive and US 290 is one of the 9 major roadways identified in the Corridor Construction Program, which is funded through the 2016 Mobility Bond and is part of the Corridor Mobility Program. The City of Austin completed a Corridor Mobility Plan for South Lamar Boulevard in April 2016. The plan outlines the recommendations for improving mobility and safety along the corridor. In addition, South Lamar Boulevard is a part of the recently approved Capital Metro Project Connect System Plan and the locally preferred alternative. The City of Austin conducted environmental studies to understand the potential impacts of the proposed improvements for the South Lamar Boulevard corridor. These studies were conducted in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, as well as per state requirements outlined in Title 43, Part 1 of the Texas Administrative Code, or TAC. The South Lamar Boulevard corridor is owned by TxDOT. The City of Austin is pursuing environmental clearance for all the South Lamar Boulevard improvements between Riverside Drive and US 290 that are recommended in the Corridor Mobility Plan that was completed in April 2016. This includes improvements that are not yet funded for construction, as well as those that have been funded by the 2016 Mobility Bond. Achieving environmental clearance for all improvements will enable the City of Austin to construct them when future funding sources are secured. The goal of this project is to address safety and mobility concerns along the South Lamar Boulevard corridor. Over 40,000 vehicles travel this corridor each day. According to crash data collected by Austin Transportation, 2,173 crashes occurred on the South Lamar Boulevard corridor between 2015 and 2020. Those crashes resulted in 21 serious injuries, 283 non-incapacitating injuries, and 321 possible injuries. 53 of those crashes involved bicyclists and 46 involved pedestrians. There are currently no bicycle facilities between Barton Springs Road and Riverside Drive. Bicycle facilities are on-street and unprotected on both sides of South Lamar from Barton Springs Road to US 290. The pedestrian facilities need reconstruction in several locations. Sidewalks either need repairs, are not connected, or do not meet ADA guidelines. In certain locations, sidewalks are inaccessible due to missing ramps, and in other locations, utility poles conflict with the sidewalk path. In many areas throughout the corridor, driveways are undefined or very wide, contributing to the numerous points of potential conflict between vehicles and cyclists and pedestrians. This is a typical section for the existing configuration of South Lamar between Riverside Drive and Barton Springs Road. This segment currently consists of 6 travel lanes, 3 northbound and 3 in the southbound directions, separated by a raised median with openings for left turn movements. There are existing sidewalks but no bicycle lanes. Other infrastructure includes an underground stormwater drainage system. The funded improvements between Riverside Drive and Barton Springs Road represent the City of Austin's ultimate vision for urban corridors. Improvements include upgraded traffic signals at Riverside Drive, Toomey Road, and Barton Springs Road, pavement rehabilitation and relocation of the existing curbs towards the center of the road by removing the existing right turn lanes, two-way bicycle lanes and continuous ADA-compliant sidewalks behind the curb on both sides of South Lamar Boulevard, access management improvements such as driveway modifications and reconstruction of the center medians, drainage improvements, bus stop improvements in partnership with Capital Metro, and enhanced landscaping with a variety of plantings and tree species, street lighting, and streetscape improvements such as benches, bicycle racks, scooter parking, and waste receptacles. Though it varies by section, the existing right-of-way width from Riverside Drive to Barton Springs Road is generally 120 feet and will not require additional right-of-way. This slide shows the proposed typical cross-section for the South Lamar Boulevard between Riverside Drive and Barton Springs Road. These improvements reflect the ultimate vision for the South Lamar corridor and are funded for construction. The project will be constructed within the existing right-of-way. Starting from the outside moving in, there will be 7-foot sidewalks where possible, 10-foot two-way bicycle lanes, and a 7-foot landscape areas on both sides of the road. The landscape areas will separate cyclists and pedestrians from the travel lanes. These elements will be accommodated within the existing right-of-way by repurposing the existing right turn lanes on both sides of South Lamar Boulevard. Next is the typical section for the existing configuration between Barton Springs Road and US 290. This segment of South Lamar currently consists of 4 lanes, 2 in the northbound and 2 in the southbound directions, separated by a 2-way center running left turn lane. Existing on-street bicycle lanes are on both sides of the road, as well as sidewalks. The existing drainage is generally an open ditch system south of Barton Skyway, and a closed stormwater drainage system north of Barton Skyway. There are also overhead utilities and poles that run along both sides of the road. The funded South Lamar Boulevard improvements between Barton Springs Road and US 290 include improved traffic signals at existing signalized intersections with enhanced technology, 2 new traffic signals at Del Curto Road and Evergreen Avenue, 4 new pedestrian highway beacons, which are mid-block signalized crosswalks for pedestrians, safety and multimodal connectivity improvements at certain intersections, pavement rehabilitation and the relocation of existing curbs towards the center of the road, new shared use paths for pedestrians and cyclists on both sides of South Lamar. Shared use paths will comply with ADA guidelines. Access management improvements such as intermittent raised medians along the corridor and driveway modifications. Drainage improvements and bus stop improvements in partnership with Capital Metro, including a new dedicated transit priority lane northbound through the intersection at Barton Skyway and Manchac Road. The right-of-way width between Barton Springs Road and US 290 along the South Lamar Boulevard varies by section, but is generally between 80 and 100 feet. The majority of the proposed improvements will be constructed within the existing right-of-way. The proposed funded improvements will require additional right-of-way of less than half an acre. These acquisitions are being analyzed during the design phase of the project. This slide shows the proposed typical cross-section for South Lamar Boulevard between Barton Springs Road and US 290. These improvements are funded for construction. The project would largely be constructed within the existing right-of-way, starting from the outside moving in 8-foot shared use paths with 2 to 4 foot landscape buffer zones, separating cyclists and pedestrians from the travel lanes, would be on both sides of the road. It should be noted that the near-term funded improvements would require limited right-of-way, with needs generally restricted to areas at major intersections where turn lane modifications are proposed. Relocation of the existing curbs closer to the center line of the road will accommodate the shared use paths and landscape buffers. The north and southbound travel lanes would remain, with intermittent median islands added along the corridor to define where the left turn should occur. Landscape and streetscape will be added to the median islands. In some places, elements from the unfunded vision are being implemented through private redevelopments. These include things like separate bike and pedestrian facilities and landscaping. This slide shows the proposed typical cross-section for South Lamar Boulevard between Barton Springs Road and US 290, where elements from the unfunded vision are being implemented in some areas. Generally, this is possible in areas where sufficient right-of-way is available at some intersections or through private redevelopments. Where possible, the City of Austin will construct improvements such as separate bike and pedestrian facilities and landscaping. The project would largely be constructed within the existing right-of-way. Starting from the outside moving in on both sides of the road, there will be 6.5 to 10-foot sidewalks, 5 to 7-foot landscape area, 8-foot bicycle paths, and up to 2-foot buffer zones separating cyclists and pedestrians from the travel lanes. Relocation of the existing curbs closer to the center line of the road will accommodate the pedestrian and bicycle facilities. The north and southbound travel lanes would remain, with intermittent medians added along the corridor to define where left turn should occur. Whether landscaping will be added to the medians will be determined prior to construction. The City of Austin evaluated the environmental impacts of improvements to South Lamar Boulevard between Barton Springs Road and US 290 that are recommended in the Corridor Mobility Plan that was completed in April 2016. These improvements would reflect the city's ultimate vision for urban corridors. If funding were to become available, the City of Austin would make efforts to leverage the improvements that are currently funded for construction in the near term. The shared use path will be repurposed as a dedicated bicycle path, and separate sidewalks will be constructed. Additional improvements such as streetscape, landscape with trees, and street lighting are also part of the unfunded improvements. The existing right-of-way width between Barton Springs Road and US 290 varies by section and is generally between 80 to 100 feet. To achieve the ultimate corridor vision, the unfunded improvements will require approximately 100 to 120 feet and acquisition of approximately 5 acres. As mentioned in the previous slide, these elements are currently being implemented in some areas where sufficient right-of-way is available, at some intersections or through private redevelopments. Finally, we show the proposed typical section for the unfunded improvements to South Lamar Boulevard between Barton Springs Road and US 290. The project would require right-of-way acquisition to construct the unfunded improvements. Starting from the outside moving in, on both sides of the road, there will be 7-foot sidewalk, 2-foot buffer, 7-foot bicycle lane, and an 8-foot landscape area separating cyclists and pedestrians from the travel lanes. Additional enhancements include streetscape, landscaping with trees, and street lighting. If funding were to become available, the City of Austin would make efforts to leverage the improvements that are funded for construction in the near term. For example, the shared use path will be repurposed as a dedicated bicycle path and separate sidewalks will be constructed. I will now discuss the environmental studies completed for the proposed project. These studies considered the potential impacts of the unfunded improvements. Technical reports for each of these studies are available online for public review. As part of the project's compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, the City of Austin considered biological resources, community impacts, water resources, as well as archaeological and historical resources. Overall impacts to environmental resources as a result of the South Lamar corridor improvements would be minimal. Air quality and hazardous material studies were also conducted, but were not found to have impacts within the corridor and will not be addressed in this presentation. The City of Austin worked to minimize environmental impacts based on the findings of these studies. First, I will discuss the biological resource study. There is no suitable habitat for state or federal listed threatened or endangered species within or adjacent to the project area. Suitable habitat for 6 species of greatest conservation need exists within the project area. Best management practices, BMPs, will be implemented for the 6 species to minimize biological impacts. Amphibian and water quality BMPs for the woodhouse toad, terrestrial reptile BMPs for the common garter snake and Texas garter snake, and vegetation BMPs for the tree dodder, low spurge, and the Correll's false dragonhead. The corridor project has been approved by Balcones Canyonlands Conservation Plan and will be incorporated into its existing Section 10 permit with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Early coordination with Texas Parks and Wildlife has been conducted and suggested BMPs have been incorporated into the construction plans. Next, I will discuss community impacts. Minor access changes would result from the addition of raised medians and modified driveway access. No displacements are anticipated as a result of the proposed project. Limited English proficiency populations were identified within the project area. Limited English proficiency persons were given and will continue to be given the opportunity for meaningful involvement in the NEPA process for the proposed project. Although minority populations are present throughout the project area, the proposed project would not have a disproportionately high and adverse impact on minority populations because the proposed raised medians would not further divide or separate any communities. The design elements in the proposed improvements include pedestrian hybrid beacons and curb ramps. Other proposed design elements integrated into the raised medians are pedestrian refuge and curb ramps along the corridor and upgraded signalization at intersections with accessible push buttons. Overall, the proposed design features will enhance mobility, access, and would reduce congestion and improve safety for both minority and non-minority census geographies. Next, I will discuss water resources. The project area does not cross any major Austin creeks or tributaries. There is one potential water of the U.S. located within the project limits. It is anticipated that any impacts to the waters of the U.S. would be authorized through Nationwide Permit 14 for linear transportation projects. Impacts will be approximately 40 square feet. No isolated wetlands were identified within this corridor. The potential impacts are below the threshold to notify the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with a pre-construction notification. Approximately 3.55 acres of 100-year flood zones are located within the project area. It is anticipated that the proposed project will not increase water surface elevation during a base flood event. Coordination with the local floodplain administrator would be required. The project area is located within the Edwards Aquifer Recharge and Transition Zones. A water pollution abatement plan and associated documents will be submitted and approved by TCEQ prior to construction. Next, I will address archaeological resources. Coordination with Archaeology Division at the Texas Historical Commission has been conducted. There are 2 known archaeological sites identified adjacent to South Lamar between Riverside Drive and Barton Springs Road. A professional archaeologist will monitor construction activities in this area and any archaeological deposits discovered will be documented, evaluated, and impacts will be mitigated. And finally, I will discuss historical resources. A review of existing historical records was conducted and 5 historic structures were identified along the corridor. 3 structures are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. They are located outside the right-of-way and it is not anticipated that they would be directly impacted. 2 structures are designated as registered Texas historical landmarks and would not be directly impacted by the project. If the project receives federal funds or if a federal permit is required, then the Texas Historical Commission will be consulted to evaluate impacts to these structures in accordance with federal law. And now I will discuss the project schedule for the South Lamar Boulevard corridor. We anticipate the entire South Lamar corridor project will receive environmental clearance by fall 2020. For the South Lamar Boulevard segment between Riverside Drive to Barton Springs Road, the final design is underway on the funded improvements and is expected to be completed by summer 2020. The project is expected to start construction beginning winter 2020. For the South Lamar Boulevard segment between Barton Springs Road to US 290, final design is underway on the funded improvements and is expected to be completed by fall 2021. The project is expected to start construction beginning fall 2022. The final design plans and construction start dates for the unfunded improvements are to be determined and are dependent upon funding availability. This concludes the presentation for the South Lamar Boulevard virtual public hearing. We want to hear from you, so please take the time to provide your input during the public comment period. As stated at the beginning of the presentation, all verbal and written comments must be received or postmarked before the end of the comment period on Thursday, July 30th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Comments can be submitted verbally by calling 512-974-9444 and leaving a voicemail. In writing online by using the web form linked in the public comment section of austintexas.gov/South Lamar ENV. By email to southlamar@austintexas.gov or by mail to the City of Austin Corridor Program Office, P.O. Box 1088, Austin, Texas 78767. Responses to verbal and written comments received will be available online at austintexas.gov/South Lamar ENV once they have been prepared as part of the official meeting summary. As a reminder, the City of Austin is not permitted to respond to comments or questions before the official meeting summary is complete. This concludes the virtual public hearing presentation. Thank you for your attendance.